Just earlier today, I was having a conversation with someone on the phone about voting rights and my concern about July of 2018. You guys remember what happened in July of 2018? Hey, do you remember in July of 2018 when there was that whole process where they were recapitulating the voting system in the United States? See, they'd already done something earlier in 2018, including how they had allowed for there to be specific kinds of electronic alterations of the motor voter option, i.e., you go to the driver's license bureau or you go to get your ID card and you can sign up to vote at the time you go to the DMV, or in the case of Texas, the Department of Public Safety. And then you register to vote, and the Board of Elections is connected to the Department of Public Safety, right? And then they did something in 2018. I, contacted some people about that. But by July, they were implementing something not only on a federal level, but a international level. And I was concerned later when I saw those changes to the CIA pension system that were concurrent to allowing the Department of State to be involved with election monitoring, right? Because I personally don't understand why the Department of State would have anything to do with monitoring a domestic election. That doesn't make sense on a certain level. But during this time frame, July 2018, which happened to correlate with significant, what I considered to be, at least initially, antitrust matters, right, at the Department of Justice, that there was a whole scheme that was being revealed, wherein votes and voting options in terms of identifying who actually received votes and who actually obtained the votes and where they voted and how the votes were counted was going to be a part of a more corporate system. And there were different classes, even, of voters, including voters that had the right to actually vote and have it recorded as a vote. And then other voters that were not actually voters, but rather were proxies as something or someone else, almost as if there were common stock. And they got a share in actually having their vote acknowledged. But there was a more comprehensive kind of algorithmic relationship between the actual one person, one vote system and the manner in which the votes were counted and calibrated in order to give the final vote count that ended up being presented publicly in the course of declaring who won the election. This is one of the reasons why, when there was the matters of contestation involving the Belarusian election, and specifically the presidential election, I contended that she actually did win, or rather may well have been the winner, were there to have been one or two actual conditions that had been met, right? That technically she made the hedge. And because she made the hedge, it wasn't about the actual legitimate, practical, specific majority vote. Well, I contend this is what's been going on ever since. And we're in a situation of determining, well, who's eligible for the voting stock? Because not all stock and not all shareholders get to vote. But when it comes to decisions about policy and policy implementation, the voters only have so much say. And how significantly their vote factors into actually addressing policy matters. Well, I mean, now we are where we are. We want to talk about voting rights. Okay. All right. Well, unfortunately, there are a bunch of other things that needed to be talked about before. And I bring this up because it also brings up considerations of candidacy. Do you really think if somebody else has identified you as being ineligible to have the kind of stock that's eligible to vote and have it counted, that they would actually allow for you to be a candidate? I mean, when I keep hearing, you're not our candidate, you're not our candidate, and we can't let anybody know, they already erased you. Well, these things only make sense in a very specific context. That's not about an actual political election, or is it? Yes, it is. It's absolutely about using the political election process as part of illegal hedging on people that get a preferential treatment when it comes to actually being able to have a say in how policy is effectuated and implemented, right? So you may be right. I may not be your candidate, but you kidnapped me. So the question becomes one of what kind of candidate were you expecting to get if you're allowed to kidnap people that may or may not at some point be deemed eligible as a candidate? I contend what you did is show me, literally, what I suspected you were setting up last year, which is that you picked opposition candidates, engaged in a completely illegal process with your insider friends in the other branches of government, and disappeared them. You disappeared them and you took their political capital. And you may or may not have kidnapped them, or, with the COVID and all, they may actually be dead. And you're trying to work accounts that they actually had as part of their political capital and as part of their actual social and work life and use it as your credit. And so, all kinds of people kept in isolation may or may not think they're on currents where they're actually communicating with or in accordance with people they used to know that they would have supported. But, right? I can neither confirm nor deny. Why would the State Department have any say in domestic election monitoring? If I do something comparable to what you're trying to get me to do with my case, if you stop with the case, we might stop making you a pauper. If you stop saying you have any right to access the ordinary political process up to and including working for a candidate or being a candidate, we might let you out of kidnapping and have a conversation with another person. Is that what this means? So you're going to let me out of this secretly rendered State Department illegal detention after, by the way, your 15-year lease on my mineral rights is already terminated if I agree to concede and just relinquish that? Because right now you got some deals, right? You've really hooked up on my writ and on my efforts at due process and all of my legal filings. But, with the COVID and with the State Department and with the fact that for whatever reason, after you kidnapped me and tried to extort me for the last 5 years, you've determined I'm just not eligible as a candidate. Let me tell you something. If you've been kidnapped, you are under no obligation to give in to somebody else's efforts to say you are not eligible to be involved in any sort of ordinary or even extraordinary political process, and that you're just supposed to relinquish who you are so somebody else can pretend it's them. Okay? You don't have to vote for me. I may not vote for you. Under no circumstances are they allowed to say, well, we're just going to erase your life because we kidnapped you for 5 years and you did not behave the way we said you had to behave in order to not be erased or continued for disappearance as part of this kidnapping. Okay? I'm putting this on the record. Just remember, you're under no obligation to concede to their efforts to extort you into some form of acquiescence to them politically disappearing you. If I wasn't your candidate, you had no right to kidnap me and steal my life and frame my friends and frame my community and then say you were allowed to be in political office. This isn't about a voting rights bill. This is about an attempt to get insurance to cover up crimes you've already committed.